go through this experience, you could end up in an even better job and be more energized than you've ever been before. So that first half a page is absolutely crucial. So I don't personally like people putting things like, I'm a really hard worker, I'm really well organized. It needs to feel right in your head and your heart.
We are trying to go through a few tips, bits of advice, some support resources that will be helpful to people that have been affected by some of the tech layoffs recently, particularly in Xero, but any other companies that are facing that as well. So we've looked at some stuff around how we get LinkedIn up to speed. We're going to look at some stuff around how we get businesses set up, if that's the direction you want to go in. But today I'm joined by James from the tax recruitment company to talk through a few tips on getting your CV up to speed and getting ready for interviews if that's the next sort of direction for you. So James, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you joining me.
Pleasure. I hope I can help.
So if someone's in a situation like at Xero and they've been there for kind of 9 years, or it's been a long time since they've got their CV up to speed and we've been for an interview, what are the first few things you'd be suggesting they think about in terms of getting ready for that process?
I'd say first of all, don't be overawed by trying to put a CV together. I speak to lots of candidates on a regular basis. And sometimes people take a long time to put it together because they think it needs to be absolutely perfect and war and peace. And it doesn't need to be. And essentially what I think you want to do is sort of almost brain dump on the page what the sort of work you've been doing in your most recent job. And most people that you'll be interviewed by or you'll apply for jobs for will be mainly interested in your work experience over the last job and probably the one before. And then after that, it's not so important. So I don't personally like people putting things like, I'm a really hard worker, I'm really well organized, I love challenges, all this sort of stuff. It's just a bit too fluffy and it's sort of expected that you'd be a hard worker, you'd be organized, you'd be motivated, all that sort of stuff. Focus on your key skills and think about like what makes you different and better from other candidates that might be out there. And really it's your unique experience that you might have had at Xero or the job prior to that.
So it's a really good point, James. And I know it's probably not the best admission for me, but when I've been hiring, I'll tend to just skip past most of that stuff because it's fairly unsubstantiated. People can write what they want. Like you say, hard worker is it's the tickets to the game, isn't it? Yeah. And so kind of conventional wisdom is that you tune and tailor your CV based on the role that you're applying for. Do you recommend that, or is that maybe again kind of in that catalogue of overthinking it and going too far with it?
No, I absolutely do recommend that, and I think you just made a very good point, Lee, as well, is that most people spend literally 1 or 2 seconds looking at a CV. So that first half a page is absolutely crucial. So if it's full of a lot of that, what I call generic fluff, then you're going to lose people almost straight away. So I recommend that people do a nice sort of summary at the start that summarizes your career to date, but your career, not your sort of soft skills. So it could be, let's say you've worked in sales for 10 years. I'm an experienced sales professional with over 10 years experience in the SaaS sector or fintech sector, something that's quite specific to you, and I'm recruiting at the moment for quite a senior role in the fintech industry, and they only want to look at candidates that are from a fintech background. So that's a real plus side for someone like yourselves who've worked at Xero and one of the leading names in the fintech sector as well. And then I think go straight into your most recent role. Don't go into education and qualifications. They should be on there, but put them towards the back of the CV because it's really that practical business experience that will really interest people, and try and a strong opening statement of like 4 sentences is brilliant, highly recommend that.
And once we got past the CV stage, hope we get into interview. What are some really good prep tips that you could give to everyone to take into an interview to help make it as successful as possible?
When you get asked a question about your experience at Xero or previous jobs, try and use the word, I did this, I helped shape this, I helped build this, not we did this, we shaped that, because it almost sounds like you weren't that influential in what happened and things, and it just sounds a lot more impressive. So that's a very simple thing in terms of language, but certainly make sure you can show evidence that you've had a good look at the website and you've also got a good feel for if there's a job description, you've properly had a look at that and thought through like, well, where have I had experience that will be useful for this? So because it's highly likely you might get asked questions about that, and it's good to have some prepared answers in your head, but they aren't so prepared that it sounds a bit unnatural, sort of thing. I also think, if we recruit a lot for tax professionals, and I say to a lot of our candidates, think of 3 really great tax projects you've been involved in the last couple of years. So when people ask you, though, give me some examples of the type of work you've been involved in recently, it just trips off the tongue, and you've got some really nice examples of work you've done. If you're a business development person, think of 3 great clients that you've won, or and that doesn't necessarily need to be the highest value, but where you feel you've just done a great job in getting someone over the line, or closing a client which might have been a really hard person to turn around, and you were really chuffed with what you did. And you just have a few sort of good examples on there, because there's nothing worth someone says, give me some examples of some of the best business you've won recently, and you think,
yeah,
you have a think, and it sounds like you haven't won much business then, So I think that's really important. I mean, we've done a podcast on preparing for interviews, which I'll share the link with you, Lee, for that. You could be, people would be very welcome to have a look at that. It's on our website. Dare I say it was Xero. If you turned up Xero with a shirt, tie and jacket on, you might be a bit overdressed for an interview there, but if you're at all unsure, always be overdressed and underdressed. I think, body language is super important, looking like really engaged and interested in what people are talking about. And the best way of showing that is obviously looking like you're engaged, but equally asking questions on what they've just talked about, if it's appropriate, because it shows you've listened and things. And it's not, interviews aren't about you talking non-stop. It's about trying to have a proper engaged conversation with another person. And if it's the right role for you, you will just feel quite relaxed and natural in the interview, because it's just you've got a good connection with the person you're talking to, and their culture probably fits your culture. So just don't try and be someone you're not as well, because if you get the job and you've been someone you've acted like someone who's not really you, it won't be the right job for you. So be yourself, and don't be. There's nothing wrong in being yourself, because yourself is great. So. Just something I just thought of on the CV, going back to that, is what I do recommend to people is don't produce CVs that are overly designed and have logos on and borders around them and stuff put into different sort of tables. I think a very just quite ordinary looking CV is what people want, because, like you, Lee, I've interviewed lots of people, and you just want to get to the key parts of the CV and not try and figure a way around sort of loads of design and things. It almost looks like, is someone hiding something here by having that? I think CV still are best being fairly sort of straightforward and black and white and things.
Unless you go for a graphic design job, I suppose. More than that, maybe leave it out. You mentioned a really interesting thing there about if it's a fit, you'll feel comfortable. And I think if I could throw a bit of advice in as well, I think that having that Xero on the CV is a really strong currency, certainly in the tech world. And so I'd really encourage any candidates to be going out and looking for something that's a fit for them, not just I need to find something, or I need to find a role that will pay the mortgage, because you're in a great position. You'll find that, I'm sure. So look for something that's a fit for you, where you work, where you want to do, and where you want to be doing the best work that you can. And Xero is an interesting business, because it's got a really strong culture, and it's very well called out. I think everyone there still knows the values, and so it might be a bit of quite a big change to go into a different business with a different culture. And you mentioned, James, asking questions as well, being a dialogue. What sort of questions would you be asking the employer or potential employer to understand a little bit more about their culture and how things work, and just make sure that's a fit for you as a candidate as well?
I think, just quite straightforwardly say sort of like, could you tell me a bit about the culture within the firm and the type of people that you think fit in well into the culture here. And I think, I really recommend to people they try and go and do face-to-face interviews. Now we got during COVID a lot of interviewing, and jobs were done virtually. But I think by visiting an office, you really get a feel for the culture of the business, and how, when you see other staff engaging with each other, that gives you a good feel for it, doesn't it, as well?
I definitely agree there, James. And I've always found when people are asking as when I'm hiring, asking me questions to find out if the role is a fit for them, that just communicates such a level of confidence in their own abilities and skills, and because they're being selective and they're looking for something that works for them. And that gives me confidence in their abilities as well, in a way that, maybe, can you give me an example of XYZ? Well, you can make something up if you're that way inclined, but actually demonstrating that behavior, showing, look, I want to know this is a fit for me, I think tends to give me a good degree of confidence anyway, or it's definitely a green flag for me. Fantastic, James. Anything else that you think would be useful?
Yeah, I'd just say for everybody, I know it's a tough situation, but don't panic. The job market is very buoyant at the moment. I think you made a really good point, Lee. Don't jump into the first role that you come across. Take your time and make sure it feels right. I always say to candidates, I think it needs to feel right in your head and your heart, the role. You need to be quite emotionally excited about it, not just your head telling you, well, this is a good opportunity and the pay's good and all that sort of stuff. It's got to feel right. So just take your time. I think try and get on board with a good recruiter, because not all the jobs out there are on LinkedIn. Recruiters will know about some jobs, and a good recruiter should be able to give you good advice and inside information on the business that you're going to see, and equally help you with your CV. And I'd be very happy. I know I specialize more in tax recruitment than anything, but if anyone would like to just me to check their CV for them and have a look at it, I'd be very happy to do that. So please get in touch if you want any help on that. But yeah, I mean, it's, and also I think, you'll end up in the right place, and you might actually find by going through this experience, you could end up in, an even better job and be more energized than you've ever been before. And it can be quite exciting getting a new job and going into a new culture and using all those great skills you've built up to help another business grow and things. So look upon it, if you can, quite positively, because I think that will help you, and it can be a very positive experience as well.
Yeah, it's a great tip, James. That certainly seems to have been a theme coming through the conversations I've had, is that it might be difficult now when it's still so sort of recent and fresh, but if you can get around to the point of seeing it as a positive, it can open up quite significant opportunities for people. So that's really good advice. James, really appreciate the offer for people to reach out to you to look at CVs or kind of ask questions. What is the best way for people to get in touch with you or find you?
Probably our website is quite easy to remember. It's www.taxrecruitment.co.uk. So just remember tax recruitment. And then my email address is quite simple. It's j.howell, HOWELL, at taxrc.co.uk. So, but I'm sure you've got my details, Lee, as well, haven't you? So, or I'm on LinkedIn. But yeah, just reach out. We're very happy to help and advise in any way I can.
Perfect. James, thank you so much again for your time. Really, really appreciate it. And I'm sure people will have got a lot of value from those for bits of tips and advice there. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Lee, and thanks for asking me.
Cheers. Speak to you soon.
Bye.